fellow citizens of Gotham. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching the political boom, 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 vigilante, the People's Channel. You guys make this happen. Super chats are back. We've been remonetized after a 2.5-year sojourn in solitary confinement, in big tech solitary confinement. We are back. So you can support our show with a super chat. You can watch the video, the ads. I'm getting paid for those now. For 2.5 years, there were ads running that I wasn't getting any money for. You can go to Patreon, all different ways you can support the show. Because we don't get money from billionaires. Billionaires, pretty widely regarded by anyone on the left as bad, unless they donate to some indie media. Then there's a good. That's a good one. That's a good billionaire. So I have to laugh because it's so insane. The indie-led media space is just a clown car now. It's like high school TMZ all rolled into one. It is just preposterous, and nothing is getting done. Nothing is going to change. Name me one big YouTube show or podcast that has affected a change, that's gotten some real progressive elected. It just hasn't happened. And as a result, everyone fights with each other, and so nothing gets done. And now the clown car continues, where who thought that Mike Pence, a evangelical nutbag, and Sean Penn, the most like Hollywood neoliberal, he's a rich Hollywood celebrity. It seems like he has a good heart. Like when he went to New Orleans during Katrina, Sean Penn seemed like, oh, he's really trying, you know? But now he's like, so Sean Penn and Mike Pence are like in agreement that ramping up the war in Ukraine, Pence wants to like America. I'm going to show you a clip where he's like wants Americans to fight, and Sean Penn apparently wants World War III or something. It's just insane. America is insane. It is such a crazy place. And what happens, because we're so polarized with right versus left, red, blue, that when one group is for something, the other group is 100% against anything they stand for, no matter what. And people just lose their minds. And so nobody can think rationally or reasonably. It just can't be, there's no space for this to be allowed. People can't just go, oh, well, I agree with this person on a lot of issues. This one issue, we don't agree. Like, no one can talk that way. I mean, that's why I was attacked by the left, because, you know, I didn't want more people to die from a once in 100-year pandemic. And I'm a sellout to big pharma, and I love government mandates. I love government mandates. I've had 156 boosters, and this weekend I was flying around on Pfizer's jet. It's great. Love it. I'll just make the joke. You'll see those jokes in the comment section, because the trolls only know how to make one joke because they're too dumb to do anything else. So we live in an insane world where there's no subtlety, there's nuance. There's no subtlety, there's no nuance. There's just it's insane. It's insane. I'll just show you the video. So this is Mike Pence, what he just said recently, and then I'll show you the Sean Penn video.
I am convinced that if the Ukrainian military doesn't stop and repel that Russian invasion, it's not going to be too long before that Russian army crosses a border that our men and women in uniform are going to have to go and fight under our NATO treaty. I am convinced that if the Ukrainian military doesn't stop and repel that Russian invasion, it's not going to be too long before that Russian army crosses a border that our men and women in uniform are going to have to go and fight under our NATO treaty.
So I can't listen to this clown anymore. First of all, his hair looks like it's painted on. A longtime fan and supporter of the show, Leftover Beefcake, says that Mike Pence just looks like a walking bag of mayonnaise. My apologies to the mayonnaise community. I hope I haven't offended you in any way. So Medea Benjamin, who was, I'm trying to get her on the show. I'm a huge proponent of her and what Code Pink do. They're just so clear, anti-war. They're against the Republicans, the Democrats, anyone that's ramped up the war machine, which has been every president in the last 20 years since 9/11, especially. The last anti-war president we had was JFK. You know, the guy that they killed. I'm sorry, a bullet defied the laws of physics and wove around. The Warren Commission's telling you the truth. So this is like, it's so many things. First of all, it's the trope that Russia's just on a rampage. If we don't stop them in Ukraine, they're going to come flooding over here. Now, we've heard that since the Korean War, right? China's going to, we've heard in Vietnam, if we don't stop Russia, the communists in Vietnam, then all of Asia is going to be, and then it's Hawaii will be a communist country, whatever. Like, we keep hearing this. They keep playing this. They've been playing this for decades, and we've heard this for 20 some years of the global war on terror. The terrorists are coming. They're going to come to our shores, So this is just insane. And what is this about? This is about justification of military spending. And I've shown you this before. But before I show you, before we go to open secrets and I show you why it doesn't matter who's in the White House. So I guess Mike Pence's stance is what? Biden isn't warring enough. It's interesting. In the first presidential debate, the first Republican debate that was last a couple weeks ago, was the first debate of this 2024 race. It was the Republican primary. There were some Republicans who were like, why are we spending all this money in Ukraine? We need to help the American people, right? But Mike Pence is like, we need more war. Because he knows, he's been in the White House. He knows who pays the bills. He knows what's get you into the White House. It's saying yes to war. And then the only thing that the two parties debate is how we're fighting war. There's never any legit candidate that's like, no war. War's bad. The media will never say war's bad. It's always, are they fighting the war the right way? Was Trump, that when Trump was in office, the Democrats were never like, Trump is a warmonger. They were just like, Trump's not doing war correctly. When Biden's in the White House, the Republicans are never like, war's bad, stop spending all this money. It's always like, Biden's not doing war correctly. So this is then, in this clown world, this bizarro land, Sean Penn has a new documentary out or he's going to be launching this, some crazy documentary where he's talking about how great, where Sean Penn is literally like wanting more war. And this is Caitlin Johnstone reposted this. I've effing had it with this S-brained idea that somehow an act of courage to risk every life of terrestrial organism rolling the dice on nuclear war to advance your personal geopolitical preferences, and that anyone who doesn't want it is a coward. Yeah, I know. That's the other thing people don't understand. When I hear liberals like pushing for war with, like you're pushing for World War III. So here's
the co-director of a new documentary called Superpower. It's about President Zelensky and the war in Ukraine. Zelensky agreed to meet with Penn in person for the first time on camera on the same day Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Great anyway. It's very important now, all this support. But I think you always advice I think Americans has to hear. Mm-hmm. So I think you see that we are just ordinary people who wants to live in our country. Yeah, and how are you here? It's so dangerous
to be here at this time in this country with you, with your countrymen. There's so much inspiration to be had here.
We spoke with Penn on Friday about his new film. In one of the clips, Andrei Yermak, one of the top advisors to President Zelensky, says to you, the U.S. position should be stronger if the United States and Joe Biden doesn't do something now. Essentially, he says America's over. That followed with a pretty robust financial investment by the United States, more than $50 billion, pledges of weapons. But from what I've heard you say, you think the United States isn't doing enough.
It is my absolute feeling that the caution with which the United States has pledged support, which seemed in my reading of February 2022 was like a lean on and the fear of nuclear conflict. Something I think all of us should look very carefully at and understand it.
of course, is possible, and that's to be concerning. The likelihood is extremely low. And as
I'm sorry. Let's just say he's saying nuclear war is a possibility, it's concerning, but the likelihood isn't that real. This is the insanity of our two-party system now. Like, Sean Penn, what are you talking about? Sean Penn, I doubt, is aware of the resolution that was passed in the Senate in 1998 to expand NATO. And 14, I did a video on this, 14 senators, Republican and Democrat, said this is a bad idea because this will provoke Russia. Again, I'm not some pro-Putin guy. I'm not happy he invaded. I don't say it's a military, action or whatever Putin is calling it. It's an invasion and it's a war. But this is preposterous. Like, if Russia put a base on the border in Canada, we would go nuts. And again, no acknowledgement of the Azov Brigade, no acknowledgement of the other neo-Nazi organizations working within Ukraine. And this isn't some crazy conspiracy. I've shown you videos by the BBC, by The Guardian. You can go right now on YouTube right now. Just search into YouTube Azov Brigade, AZOV Brigade, and you'll see videos from reputable Western news organizations from 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017 saying there's neo-Nazis in Ukraine. So this is just insane. I don't know. I don't know what. Does Sean Penn not have Google?
one of our witnesses in the film says, are we going to let a gangster with nuclear weapons dictate the way we live? So I think that the Ukrainians won't let him do that.
In the documentary, you spoke with a Ukrainian fighter pilot named Juice, who I understand was killed later in a training incident. Was your personal connection to him and the case he made to you part of why you are pushing this point on F-16 so strongly?
I was pushing it when I was with Juice and he was alive. He dreamt of flying F-16s. I think that he was a man who was born into a time where he had to do this extreme thing. He did it with poise and skill and focus and compassion. And so he had come to Washington to lobby for the F-16s and also was buying helmets for his helicopter pilot friends on eBay here to bring back. So it was like that. And then I suppose now, was it July that it was announced that there would now be an F-16 program, those resources
eventually, yeah,
over a long period of time. And a couple of weeks later, I got the message that he'd been killed. I think not only would Juice be alive today, if we had been as bold as we like to claim to be historically as a country.
No, on Penn. This pilot would be alive today if America hadn't provoked this. Zelensky in January of 2022 was like, the West is causing problems. The West is creating tension here. Zelensky was ready to deal. Zelensky said, we're not going to have NATO bases and nuclear weapons in Ukraine. He said that in January. Then February, Boris Johnson, then Prime Minister of England, visits Zelensky. After that meeting, I don't know what was said behind closed doors. Zelensky's like, no Russia, we're going to have NATO bases here. And that's when Putin invaded. So we've helped provoke this. Again, not a fan of Putin. Don't like that he did this. But we can't sit here and act. This is a false narrative based on conclusive data and evidence that is a matter of public record. The NATO charter in the 50s said it's not going to move east. We've broken our own charter. Every Russian president, every Russian has said, we don't want NATO any closer. And NATO keeps moving closer. Like, again, we would not tolerate Chinese bases in Mexico. Look what happened when Cubans tried to put missiles, when Russia tried to put missiles in Cuba. And what is never told in American history books or classes or documentaries is that that was in response to the fact that we had put missiles in Turkey very close to Russia. So they said, okay, if you're going to do that to us, we're going to do that to you. And then we act like we're this innocent. I don't know. This information, everyone can find this information. These aren't wild conspiracies. You can go find this yourself.
With our principles, with our Republicans and our Democrats, with our leadership, the citizenry too, while we were putting all those Ukrainian flags out, we should have been demand decisiveness in this case, because at some point caution becomes cowardice. But there's still an opportunity for us to do the right thing.
58% of Americans polled by CBS disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling the situation with Russia and Ukraine. And I'm getting the sense from you, you're disappointed too.
Yeah, I respect President Biden very much. There have been a couple of things that I think have been disasters up to this point. There should be an implicit understanding between private citizens and leaders in government that, there are things that I don't know about, things that need to remain classified.
Right.
So every day, even when I was with Juice, I was privately thinking, yes, it's our job to fight this fight. But privately, I was thinking, but maybe they're doing it behind closed doors. And tomorrow we're going to wake up to that squadron. Enough time has passed. I think it's been to date a tragic mistake. And I hope and encourage this president that he deserves the legacy of doing this properly.
Polling also shows big majorities of Americans continue to support economic sanctions on Russia. 61% of Republicans, though, say the U.S. should not send weapons to Ukraine. 50% say the U.S. should not send aid and supplies to Ukraine. That is a big shift from where the Republican Party was in terms of, in the past, being very strong on Russia. But some of it, in terms of the rhetoric, reflects this sense that America needs to fix itself at home. How do you respond to that thinking?
I think there's more than a compelling argument that would change those minds. And I understand why they're confused. I mean, I'm hoping in its little way that this film can help context.
No, Sean Penn, you're confused. You don't understand the basis of those statistics that woman read. Our Americans are struggling every day financially. And we're getting no help from our government. We didn't get any help under Trump. We didn't get any help under Biden. This is during COVID, right? Both parties are complicit in the largest upward transference of wealth that has ever occurred in this country, right? So you are woefully confused, rich Hollywood millionaire, about the struggles of the American people who are sitting there going to the grocery store going, I can't afford this. I just spent a month looking for an apartment, and it is like unreal how expensive apartments are in Los Angeles. I remember my first studio apartment in Studio City, California, 96, 97. My first apartment was a $700 2-bedroom, 2-bath in North Hollywood, and I had 2 roommates. I was paying $300 a month. Then I got my first own apartment, studio apartment. It was $600 a month. That's now going for $1,800 roughly. That's a 300% increase in 25 some years. Wages have not gone up 300%. Gas is $4 or $5 a gallon, depending on where you're living in the country. You don't understand what Americans are in such pain. We can't afford anything. We can't afford to go out to eat. We can't afford to take our kids anywhere. Americans can't afford anything, pets, anything. We can't afford health care. Even if we have health insurance, we got to hope we don't get really sick, because there's going to be all these other expenses. And so when Americans see like billions and billions and tens and hundreds of billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine, a war that we helped manufacture, we're like, what are we doing there? This is unbelievable to me. This is such a victory for the military industrial complex and the propaganda arm of the intelligence community, that now a Hollywood liberal who was said 20 years ago at the Oscars, one thing all actors know, in addition to the fact that there's no WMDs, he was calling out Bush for Sean Penn, this guy right here, called out Sean Penn, called out George W. Bush 20 years ago for lying about weapons of mass destruction, is now advocating for more weaponry for a ridiculous proxy war that only benefits the military-industrial complex and the banks that fund it. Unbelievable to me, man. 20 years ago, this guy, 20 years ago, 2003, 2004 Oscars, he said weapons of mass destruction are a lie. WMDs in Iraq are a lie. Did movies about it. And now here he is like, the American people are confused and we need more F-16s.
I would be confused if I hadn't had the opportunity to do this.
Better communication of the why and the justification
Yeah, I think
for the billions of dollars.
Yeah, if the current leadership would just do one thing now, it would be the president saying to his cabinet, we are not spinning the story on Ukraine anymore. So if it's about what are they capable of, we're going to let our commanders in Fresno at the Cal National Guard that's been doing joint military exercises with them for 30 years tell us what their capability is. And we're going to say it unfiltered to the American people.
You end the documentary talking about this feeling of unity you had when you were in Ukraine, and you compare it to what you see here at home. And you actually end on the images of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman, and Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. And you say, we're going backwards. Why do you think they symbolize that?
I think that we've come to a point where we as the voters, we as the citizens have to look at our politicians and say, look, you're very smart. We agree with your policy. Why would you want to call it socialist?
Marjorie Taylor Greene is smart.
Why would you want to put up a middle finger to people who have a reaction to that? You're a leader. Just get the policy across. I'm not interested in these people self-celebrating or grandstanding. Jerks like me do enough of that. Leaders can't do that anymore. And so on the right, on the left, we have to demand that people actually are accountable accountable and ourselves for the division that we have and break it.
Thank you, Sean Penn, for sharing your work with us. And Superpower.
Wow. It's unreal. Sean Penn called out George W. Bush 20 years ago on the Oscars, the stage of the Oscars, for lying about weapons of mass destruction. Or maybe it was the SAG Awards. It was one of the award shows. Look it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube. And now here he is advocating for more weaponry for a ridiculous proxy war, and woefully out of touch as to why Americans don't want to spend money on this war. Because Sean Penn, the last time Sean Penn couldn't figure out how to pay his bills was, my guess, 40 years ago, when he was a young, struggling actor in the 80s before he got famous, is my guess. Probably in the 80s, probably 40 some years ago is the last time Sean Penn was like, I got $800 in my bank account and $1,500 worth of bills, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. And Americans are going through that every week, every month. And a glooming recession. Will there be a recession? We're already in one, and it's going to get worse. I just found out RBC, the Royal Bank, that is laying people off. And I talked about this in March when the SVB bailouts and everything has started happening. I said, get ready for the fall. It's going to be a big banking collapse. And if that happens, is that when we're going to send more money to Ukraine? Because when that happens, we're going to need more stimulus money. The ruling elites want us to be broke and desperate for their crappy wage slave jobs. Sean Penn doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm sure he met these people in Ukraine and was emotionally touched by them. When you're there on a personal level, you think, wow, and you can't really see the geopolitics of it. He doesn't, and if you're buying the narrative that Russia just went nuts and invaded out of nowhere, then of course you're going to be like, these people in Ukraine, they need our help. They need our help. And this isn't a slam on the people of Ukraine. What they're going through is awful. But Putin is calling this the denazification of Ukraine. You notice how that was not mentioned in that 7-minute interview at all? And I doubt there's not even a frame or a second or a minute of dialogue in Sean Penn's movie that mentions the Azov Brigade or the neo-Nazis. I bet you there isn't one. And again, it's woefully out of touch because you don't understand how brutal the World War II was on the Soviets, on the Russian people. They lost somewhere between 20 to 25 million people. That's why they're still very much like no Nazis. The swastika is outlawed in Russia. The only place you can see the swastika anywhere in Russia is in World War II artwork where it's like a Russian soldier putting their boot on the swastika. Sean Penn, like so many like actor liberal rich people, has is not getting the full picture, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Sounds like his heart's in the good place. I bet you he's got a good heart. It seems like he's got a good heart. He wants to help, but he doesn't. How he's missing all this, and how no one in his inner circle is like, Sean, are you aware of this? This is what happens when you get rich and successful. You get insulated by a bunch of people agreeing with everything you say. And you need people going, are you sure? Are you sure about that? You need that. We all need that. So I'm going to bring that up here on this channel, on my little YouTube channel with 72,000 subscribers. I don't think anyone's going to hear it. I don't think it's going to change anything. You guys watch it, and I appreciate you watching. But I'm up against mega millionaires, Hollywood celebrities, and billion-dollar media outlets like CBS. And how easy did Sean Penn get the money for this movie? I like Sean Penn as his acting. And again, I really believe he probably his heart is in the right place, but he does not know what he's talking about. He does not. There's so much information he does not have. Like, share, subscribe, guys. Send this out there. Go to my website, grahamelwood.com. Sign up for the newsletter. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. Oh, yeah, I was going to say, go to opensecrets.org and type in 2020 defense spending during the 2020 campaign. The top 3 candidates, Bernie Sanders with 800 grand from the defense industry. Yep. There's no Santa. Number 2, Donald Trump, $2.7 million. Number 1, Joe Biden, $3.1 million. This is all just profits for the defense industry. Follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth, and shave your knuckles for justice. Boom.